Welcome, and thank you so much for joining our discussion on designing and adapting Korean language classes for virtual delivery. I'm Linda Tobash, and I'm Senior Advisor for Education at the Korea Society. The Society is well known for its programming in policy, international relations, government, finance, arts, and culture. And I do invite you to visit our website where you can explore the wide array of programming that we have that might be of additional interest to you. We also have an 8-level Korean language program. And in March 2020, most likely similar to many of you, we found ourselves scrambling to quickly convert what had always been face-to-face language instruction to online learning platforms and e-learning modes. We've learned a lot, but we know we have so much more to learn. And so I am delighted and honored to introduce you to our speakers, who graciously have agreed to share their insights, knowledge, and expertise with all of us. Dr. Choi from Emory University, where he's Senior Lecturer and Coordinator of the Korean Language Program, will lead us off focusing in on best practices for transforming traditional classrooms to e-learning modes. He'll be followed by Dr. Yoon from University of Iowa, where he is an Associate Professor of Instruction and also Coordinator of the Korean Language Program. And Dr. Yoon will be delving into tips and tools and best practices to use in virtual classrooms and also blended classrooms. And both of our presenters will be discussing solutions to challenges we can expect to encounter, but also opportunities that are unique to virtual delivery. Following their presentations, Dr. Suh, who's president of the American Association of Teachers of Korean, will moderate a Q&A with the presenters. And Dr. Suh, in addition to her considerable responsibilities as president of AATK, is also a senior lecturer and director of the Korean language program at Columbia University. So please join me in welcoming our speakers. They have wonderful insights and information to share with all of us. And now I'd like to turn the screen over to Dr. Choi. Thank you.
Hello everyone, it is my honor to share my experience of online teaching with fellow teachers and the general audience during this pandemic era. I'm very thankful to Korea Society and Linda for organizing this wonderful event. Today I will talk about how to transform the existing face-to-face course to an online course without sacrificing the students' learning outcome. This presentation is grounded on my experience of developing the elementary level Korean online course before the COVID-19 pandemic. In this presentation, I will share why I developed the course, how I did it, and the outcomes, whether the new online course was as good as the existing course. I will also discuss its challenge and limitation. First of all, I developed this course in 2016, long before COVID-19 pandemic. At that time, we had a high demand for Korean classes, but could not accommodate it due to limited faculty. So we wanted to offer the Korean courses during the summer, but most students couldn't take it because they went home for the summer. So I decided to offer this course online so that the students can take it remotely. Another benefit of developing an online course is the online class material can be used for the regular course too. In fact, I was able to offer a hybrid online course during the regular semester using the online course material developed during the summer. Third, I believe having an online course would accommodate various types of students' learning style. This is why I developed a Korean online course. It began for accommodating the students' needs, but now teaching online is an inevitable option during this pandemic. When I developed this course, it had to be an equivalent class with the existing Korean 101 course, so that the students can continue to take the next level after taking this course. So I set the same student learning outcome, and the target proficiency level for this new course. I analyzed the course components and identified transferable or non-transferable activities to the new course. In planning the online course structure, I had to decide the synchronous or asynchronous components to develop the equivalent activities or create new activities and have an assessment plan. Based on this plan, I explore what kind of resources are available to me and develop the course materials and modules and lesson plan for each class. To show the detailed process, I'll first introduce how our traditional face-to-face course is structured. The target proficiency level of this course is Novice High in the active OPI scale. The student learning outcome of this course is to communicate with Korean native speakers at basic everyday survival tasks. The course consists of lecture, practice, and performance sessions. In the lecture session, we focus on the explanation and analysis of the linguistic features.
So we have honorific expressions. So we have honorific nouns, verb, and particles, and some other forms. So I'm going to introduce first honorific nouns. So here, age, the plain form is nai.
In the practice session, we practice all the grammar points covered in lecture sessions.
네. 누구예요? 할머니예요. 자, 할머니 뭐 하세요? 노래. 플라이 랜딩 폼. 노래 하세요. 할머니께서 노래하세요. Differential form.
In the performance session, students can perform meaningful tasks based on what they have learned from the lecture and practice session. This shows the assessment plan for the traditional course. As you can see, performance and assignments are 50% of total grade, and quiz and exams are the last 50%. After analyzing the course, I was able to identify several instructional units of this course. Please keep these units in your mind for understanding the following parts. In developing online activities and modules, we first have to decide which instructional units are compatible with asynchronous or synchronous sessions. I put lecture video from lecture sessions, individual practice activities from practice session, and writing performance from performance session to asynchronous sessions. Practice that requires pair or group activities, and speaking performance that requires a real-time assessments are designed as synchronous activities. Since I was not able to effectively proctor the quiz and exam as I would in-person class, I had to change the vocabulary quizzes to vocabulary practice using Quizlet and Canvas tools. For the lesson test and final exam, I changed the test format to a more holistic way of assessment, such as oral interviews and open book writing tests in the synchronous session. I also changed the assessment plan according to restructuring the course components. For example, I added an online assignments category to reflect the asynchronous sessions performance and reduced the portion in the vocabulary quizzes since I have changed it from test format to practice format. The next step is developing courseware by linking online activities to a teaching platform. It is about how to implement the teaching plan on the courseware to effectively deliver them to the students. To do so, we need to explore available resources and identify the most relevant ones for each instructional unit. For example, if we decide to create a grammar lecture video for the asynchronous session, there are many factors to consider and decide. First, we identify a screen capture program to record it. Second, we decide the lecture delivery option to deliver it to the students, and then package it together with other activities on the learning management system. Each instructional unit has been implemented in the courseware through this process. On this page, I list all available resources that I identified, and the ones in blue font are what I used in our Korean online course. In this process, we first determine the pedagogical activities and explore the available resource, believing pedagogical motivation is what needs to drive the technology, but not vice versa. Finally, we developed the course module by mapping each instructional unit to the relevant pedagogical resources on Canvas, which is our courseware. For example, vocabulary practice was developed with the Canvas test tool and Quizlet program. A lecture video was created with Camtasia and delivered to students on VoiceThread. A lesson test was conducted using the Zoom meeting and Canvas test tool. For the final project, which is creating vlog about their daily life, students created on YouTube and shared the link on the Canvas discussion board. This is how we package all the activity to the learning module on Canvas. This is an example of asynchronous lecture and practice activity with the voice.
Okay, this is lecture for lesson 2, 한국어 수업, Korean language class. This is vocabulary for lesson 2, conversation 1. We have nouns related to schools.
맛있어요.
And please answer the following questions, and in your answer you have to list at least two adjectives. So, and by using 그리고.
한국 식당이 구려 그래도 음식 안 맛있어요.
Here, 그리고, not 그래고. 그리고.
After teaching the online Korean 101, my concern was whether students in this class reached the same student learning outcome. Since this course is 6 weeks intensive summer course, it was hard to compare this course with the traditional course in the regular semester. So I traced the performance of students from Korean 101 online. 4 students from 101 online to Korean 102 in the following fall semester. Their Korean 102 instructors confirmed that all 4 students have no problem completing Korean 102 course, and all of them received A for their final grade. 2 students were reported to have more spelling errors than the other students in the class at the beginning of the semester, but they could catch up the class soon. We also conducted a Korean proficiency test at the beginning of the semester and at the end of the semester. The table shows the difference in proficiency test between students from Korean 101 online and the regular Korean 101 course in the entry test and the exit test. The table shows the difference in proficiency test between students from Korean 101 online and the regular Korean 101 course in the entry test and the exit test. The data indicate the students' proficiency level from Korean 101 online course and traditional course are not significantly different. There are some challenges in developing and teaching the online course. First, it requires an extensive investment of time and energy from the instructor for the first semester, although it eventually reduced from the following year. Second, time management is also a challenge for the instructor too. Different from a traditional course, it is most important for the instructor to upload course contents and activities and give grades and comments on time. We also often encounter a technical challenge in teaching online course. If it happens during the synchronous session, there are not many options that the instructor can do. Last but not least, conducting a test is another issue in online teaching, since it is impossible to proctor the exam effectively. There are online proctoring services such as Examity or ProctorU, but it is expensive to use for a large class. For the assessment, it is also challenging to oversee students' performance during the breakout sessions. Instructors are required to revise the assessment plan for online course, aiming at the same level of students' learning outcomes. Given these limitations, a more in-depth discussion may be needed regarding whether we should have the same student learning outcome for both the existing course and online format courses. Thank you for watching my presentation. Next, Dr. Yoon from University of Iowa will talk about the challenges and opportunities of teaching foreign language online.
안녕하세요. Hello everyone. My name is Sang-Seok Yoon. I currently teach Korean language, culture, and linguistics at the University of Iowa. It is my great honor to talk to the Korea Society today. As you can imagine, Korea is relatively less known in Iowa compared to big cities where there are big Korean communities. So, Korean language education was not very active at the University of Iowa until about 10 years ago. However, as Korea has emerged as a major exporter of popular culture and tourism, the number of students learning Korean has increased dramatically during the last decade. And now there are more than 300 students learning Korean language and culture every year at the University of Iowa, with many of these students going to Korea to study or work. As you already know, Korean is a very difficult language for English native speakers to learn. Korean and English are typologically very distant languages, and the motivations of learning Korean are very different among students. Depending on a learner's native language and motivation, the pace of their development can largely vary from one another. Throughout my career, I have been trying my best to find ways to promote students' motivations and make learning fun and effective. I have especially been trying to make use of online tools, as I believe that computer-mediated learning can be efficient to my students. Have you heard of the term digital natives? This term was first used by Mark Presky in 2001, and the original definition of digital natives were those who were born after 1980. Digital technology has developed much more since then, and the contemporary digital natives are using new technologies more actively. The current college students belong to Generation Z, who grew up in the digital world. Many of you, including me, are likely digital immigrants, and you may have experienced a bit of cultural shock on various occasions while interacting with digital natives. The major characteristics of digital natives are they are skilled in operation of information and communication technologies. They learn intuitively. They can learn actively by participation. They are good at multitasking. And they are less hierarchical and equal in human relationships. To facilitate my students' learning, I have been adopting online language teaching for many years. In traditional face-to-face classes, there are class lectures and activities, and students review what they learned in class and do homework at home. Use of online tools for a traditional class is supplementary and limited compared to blended classes or fully online courses. Since a few years ago, I have been actively adopting online teaching to my traditional courses to facilitate students' learning. This type of teaching is often called a flipped classroom, where students can learn by watching online lectures before they come to class and do more activities in class. This method is also called blended learning, hybrid learning, or technology-mediated instruction. At the University of Iowa, we also offer fully online classes where students meet their teachers through pre-recorded online lectures and live Zoom meetings. Classes are managed by a learning management system called Canvas. Each type of class has its own advantages and disadvantages. Physical contact, of course, has lots of advantages for learning language. But utilizing online tools also has its advantages, especially for digital natives. So, I think it would be ideal to teach hybrid, taking the advantages of face-to-face and online, but a blended class requires lots of effort from teachers. In today's presentation, I would like to talk about my experiences with developing and managing online classes while referring to tips I learned from recent studies and other lectures. I hope my presentation inspires you positively for your own teaching. About 4 years ago, I started making lecture videos for teaching grammar and vocabulary, as they are the most challenging areas for my students. First, I just made videos with my camcorder in empty classrooms and just uploaded them on YouTube without any editing. In the beginning, I made the videos only available for my students. But my colleagues in other institutions suggested that I open them to the public so that their students could watch them too. So I opened my videos to the public and I got lots of views from other institutions and other countries as well. Now I get many comments from all over the world. I realized that YouTube is a great platform for learning these days, and I have been making various kinds of videos for learning Korean. Currently, my YouTube channel has hundreds of videos and has more than 70,000 subscribers from all over the world. I have also created online quizzes and assignments which are required to be done on time to follow class. One of the challenging parts was typing Hangul, but students who are largely digital natives learned to type in Hangul without much difficulty. But I still think writing Hangul with hands is also important So I sometimes ask my students to write homework on paper and upload the image of their homework on the class management system. And I can provide feedback with my iPad as I do on paper. Recently, I have been using this tool called Flipgrid often, where students record a short video and students respond to each other's videos so that they can interact asynchronously.
안녕하세요. 제 이름은 KT 리하예요. 저는 20살이에요. 그리고 3학년이에요. 제 전공은 성악이에요. 저는 쌍둥이가 있어요. 쌍둥이 이름이 로렌이에요. 로렌은 에임스에 살아요.
키티 씨, 안녕하세요. 여름 방학에 잘 지냈어요? 고양이가 아주 귀엽고 작아요. 자연이 예쁜 이름이에요. 요즘 어떤 음식을 요리해요? 다음에
I also use this tool called Padlet, where students create posters collaboratively. Here, students made invitation cards for their imaginary parties. For teaching online classes, I have had plenty of difficulties, and I'm still struggling with them. Learning new technologies is always difficult. We often have technical issues such as poor internet connection or errors in the learning management system. Time management is difficult, and keeping students' motivation high is also very challenging. Test and grading, class activities, sense of community, these are all challenging things in online classes. I would like to give you some advice for teaching online courses. First of all, you have to provide very detailed instructions for managing your class. Because online courses requires lots of self-study, it is more necessary for students to clearly know what they are supposed to do while taking a course. Secondly, studies show that the pace of online classes are slower than face-to-face classes. Online class should go slowly and clearly because online communication is not as smooth as face-to-face communication. Third, as a digital immigrant, I was very scared of using technologies, but I could manage classes quite successfully with my limited skill of using technologies. I mostly use just YouTube, Zoom, Google Docs, and Canvas, and they generally work okay. I have become familiar with using those tools as I use them often, and now I'm more confident in learning new tools. I'm currently developing a KakaoTalk-based chatbot with Sujin Kang, who is a very smart grad student at the University of Hawaii, which can automatically chat with beginning level students. So, if you feel scared of using technologies like me, just start with simple things that you can do. Actually, they are not as difficult as they seem. Fourth, project-based learning has been receiving attention from many educators. Students learn a lot while working on individual or group projects. I found that video making products are very effective for online courses. Students can talk about their daily lives through videos. They can make presentations about their research. They can make videos of their interviews with Korean people.
1964년 1월 20일 가수 김광석은 대구에서 태어났습니다. 병역 후에 김민기의 음반에 데뷔하면서 노차차 1집에도 참여했습니다.
에서는 1965년부터 옥토버 페스트를 기념했어요. 비록 그렇게 오래되지는 않았지만 아이오에서 제일 오래된 축제예요. 축제는 금요일이 2시에 맥주통을 탑핑 시작해요. 맥주를
어디에서 태어나서 자랐어요? 한국에서 태어나서 자랐고 한국에서 중학교까지 있다가 고등학교 때 미국으로 왔어요. 한국 나이로는 21살이고 미국 나이로는 19살.
I also found that using social media for group activities is efficient. For assessing students' development, it would be better to weigh oral proficiency more than written tests. And grades should be based on portfolios, not on just tests. Fifth, it is not easy to have a sense of community while taking an online course. I recommend teachers to find as many ways as possible to connect with students. I think social media groups would be very helpful. Assigning group projects will be helpful as well. Students learn better when they feel that they are cared for by their teachers and they have classmates who are learning together. So it is crucial to create a sense of community for online classes. So far, I have talked about some tips that may be helpful for your teaching. Using new technologies has steadily gained popularity over the course of many years, and ironically, COVID-19 has accelerated the development of online education. I believe that after COVID-19, using online tools in language classes will increase. In my opinion, among face-to-face, blended learning and fully online courses, blended learning seems to be the most efficient. You can start teaching online with some basic knowledge on technology, but preparing for online language teaching requires lots of time. So you should plan early. Thank you for listening to my presentation today. Now, Dr. Joowon Suh from Columbia University will continue to lead a discussion about Bumyong and my talks. 감사합니다. Thank you very much.
Welcome everyone to our Q&A/discussion session for designing and adapting Korean language instruction for virtual delivery organized by the Korea Society. I would just like to mention that for us to talk to each other in English, it's completely new and rather unnatural. So please understand if you find us a little awkward at times. It has nothing to do with our personalities or our relationship as longtime colleagues. I just wanted to point that out first before we start our discussion. Well, okay now. If you're here for this discussion, you must have already reviewed 2 presentations and video releases by Dr. Choi and Dr. Yoon. But in order to contextualize our session, I will briefly summarize what I found the most interesting about your lectures. Dr. Choi's presentation, Transforming Traditional Korean Course into an Online Course, provides us with the very practical, detailed guidelines for what to do if we want to create and develop an online course based on traditional in-class, face-to-face foreign language classes. And Dr. Yoon's presentation, The Challenges and Opportunities of Teaching Foreign Languages Online, offers a little bit more general, but still practical and very candid advice for what we need to consider when we design online classes. The focus of these two presentations might be slightly different, but both of your presentations are picturing quite encouraging prospects of online language teaching. And interestingly, you two both started online language teaching about 4 years ago, way before the current instructional reality imposed on us by COVID-19, which tells me that we might have been on our way already to incorporate more and more online language teaching tools and started moving our in-class instructions slowly but steadily online even before COVID-19. That being said, my first question is about adjustments we need to make for online language teaching. Both of you have already touched upon this issue briefly in your presentations, but I think the audience would like to hear more about the most important adjustments we should make when we teach Korean or a foreign language online. More specifically, what would be the first thing we should adjust, change, modify, or transform in terms of instructional or learning goals and expectations? That would be my first question. So who would want to answer first? Maybe Dr. Che, Bumyong, 최 선생님?
Okay. As I mentioned in the presentation, our Korean elementary class is performance-based class, and the main goal of this course is to help students to carry out a culturally coherent performance of the language. So assessment like vocabulary quizzes and practice and feedbacks serve as preparation for their performance. Assessment during the performance also they plays a key role in achieving this goal. However, in an online setting, we cannot use the same method of assessments. We could not conduct vocabulary quizzes every lesson. We had less interaction with students during peer group activities in the breakout session. The online setting also limit the instructors giving real-time feedback on students' writing in class. We could not check whether students memorized a key dialogue before they perform their speaking tasks. So overall, the instructor had less control over the students. Instead, we provide students with more opportunities to practice vocabulary, grammar points, and expressions individually on asynchronous mode and give individual feedback on those activities. So the instructor's role as facilitators was increased in the online setting. And with those resources that we provide online, students had to take more responsibility for their own performance. And we need a support system for students who were left behind. And that's the change that we had experienced in teaching online.
Thank you, Dr. Che, 최 선생님. And then maybe Dr. Yoon 선생님, you can answer.
Yes, yeah, there are definitely many things we have to modify when we teach virtually. Especially when teaching virtual classes, I found that giving lectures is not easy. So in face-to-face classes, I can sense if my students are following well or not. Sometimes students laugh and sometimes they nod their heads. And sometimes, they look bored, then I can adjust my pace faster or slower or jump to another topic or making jokes, while monitoring students, responses. But in a virtual class, I sometimes feel like I talk to myself or talk to a wall or whatever, like when I give lectures. So I think I have to just focus on delivering the contents as I planned in a very plain way. So I try to minimize lectures while teaching online and let my students watch my lecture videos more before or after my classes. So I think it is necessary to prepare many online resources that can substitute, in-class lectures. So you can make your own lectures, or you can find many good lectures or resources on the internet. So at my institution, University of Iowa, we use a video learning platform called Kaltura. it is a great tool where you can monitor if your students actually watch the videos or not. However, I chose YouTube just for uploading my lectures because students feel much more familiar with YouTube than Kaltura. Students watch YouTube videos as if we watch television. So even though I cannot monitor how students watch my videos, I just give them freedom to watch them or not. I just give tests based on the video lectures and class activities. And now I found that students now take watching videos as part of taking the classes. So I think, the first thing we need to adjust is how to deliver these lectures. And preparing lots of online resources would be the first step, I think.
Okay, thank you. Then my second question is more geared toward the Korean language teaching. Maybe it might be redundant in a sense, but are there any challenges specific to the Korean language teaching in terms of online teaching, whether it is a flipped, hybrid, blended, synchronous or asynchronous format? Maybe this time Dr. Yoon 선생님 goes first.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, if we do not meet students physically, we have less opportunities to monitor their progress. So the more we use online for teaching, the more students are responsible for their own learning. So I think it is true for any kind of virtual mode of teaching and learning, not just for Korean language class. So I think it is crucial to provide students with opportunities for learning and practicing by themselves. And I found, project-based learning can be efficient for online classes. So I mentioned about that, during my presentation. And when I first teaching online, I first thought maybe using Hangul would be challenging in online mode. Especially in the beginning level classes, students are supposed to know how to write Hangul in a proper way. And maybe typing, I used to teach typing in Hangul in the second semester of the first year Korean. But now, I asked them to learn how to type Hangul by themselves. And I found the students learn to type Hangul very quickly. As I mentioned in the video, they are digital natives. So, they learn, using this, keyboard, Hangul keyboard, very quickly. But I heard that in some institutions, they just asked students type everything from the beginning, and they realized that, they cannot write, with their hands well. So yeah, it is necessary to give them some homeworks, physically write with their hands. So yeah, it is necessary to give them some assignments for writing Hangul. And, thanks to, the contemporary technologies, as I showed in my video, we can give feedback as we did, with the paper. So yeah, so Hangul was a little bit of challenging, but I think it's not a big deal. Yeah.
Okay. The Hangul and handwriting assignments.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we gotta do. Okay. How about 최 선생님, Dr. Che?
Yeah, actually, I had the same comments about the Hangul actually. So
Okay.
yeah. So from the learner's perspective, so the biggest shift in the online elementary level classroom is actually from handwriting to typing when they learn writing in Korean. So yeah, as Dr. Yoon mentioned, in a regular classroom, we start to teach handwriting Hangul first, and then typing is very optional. So mostly until the intermediate level. But when we start teaching Korean online in elementary levels, so as Dr. Yoon mentioned, actually, typing becomes main for our class actually, and then handwriting is somehow supplementary. So, for example, we ask students write some writing practice using the workbook and then scan it and submit it. But the most activity done in online, and then they need to learn typing. I'm still in the prototyping position since I believe that typing is more useful and reflect better communication mode in this digital era, but still it is not empirically studied how this change would affect student learning experience. So I'm wondering actually what happened, what kind of things happening in their learning mode. So
Yeah, that's a very interesting actually question that we all have to think about, like handwriting versus typing, and we are using both skills in real life. So probably we should teach both to our students. So Hangul is probably the most challenging part in terms of online language teaching, Korean online language teaching. Okay, so now we are approaching from a slightly different point of view. What are the things out there that we can do only in an online format? In other words, what would be the most effective instructional features and strengths of online language teaching? So, Dr. Che, you want to go first, or?
yeah, so one benefit of online teaching is we have more chance to focus on the individual students. For example, when we teach the Hangul and pronunciation, it is hard to listen to individual students' pronunciation in the classroom. In the online setting, I can check everyone's pronunciation on the complete set of the syllables, and I can give them feedback on it. So, and also student can study based on their own pace for lectures and practice in the asynchronous sessions, and the instructor can access the student's performance on online before they start a synchronous session. So then the instructor can provide more tailored instruction. So that's, I think, another advantage in teaching online.
Okay. And how about you, Dr. Yoon?
I found that introverted students are doing well in online classes.
Yeah.
So some students are too shy to raise their hands and express their opinions in physical classes, but in virtual class, I sometimes ask students to type their questions on a shared Google Doc. And I found that more students ask questions in online classes compared to face-to-face classes. And I also give individual or group activities for writing on Google Docs. And it is good to refer to other groups or people's writing, when they work on Google Docs. Also, these writings are saved online, so students can go back to the Google Doc page to review before they take the test. So I generally give some writing, questions on my test, and I found that students are doing better in writing in their test. And also, I do group activities in class, in physical class and in online class. And it is often done with the students who are physically close to each other. And somehow we don't have designated seating, but they generally sit at the same position, and they generally sit with the same people. So I try to mix them up, the arrangement of students in face-to-face classes, but I could not always do that. But in Zoom breakout rooms, I can give students opportunities to meet with a variety of people. So that was also, good in online class. And lastly, I sometimes see that students communicate with each other with chat function of Zoom. So everybody's talking in the Zoom. But when I was talking, like when I show some videos, I saw that sometimes they communicate, whole class is communicating through this chat function. So in a physical class, they cannot do that. But it is possible to have whole class discussion in online classes. Generally, building sense of community in an online class is not easy. But for that sense, they are, our students are very good at, communicating in a group mode through this kind of chat. So I found that was one of the advantages of teaching virtually.
Truly, they're digital natives. They're good at multitasking, much better than we are.
Yes.
And and also, it's kind of interesting. I think it's just maybe it's not easy to build a community online, but at the same time, probably if we build one, that there will be a different type of community. It's basically based on different modes of communication and different type of community. So it's just we cannot do it, or it's not that we cannot do it. It's just maybe different kinds we have to get used to. So that's what I was thinking when I listened to your answers. Okay, so my last question today is that what would happen to online language teaching after the COVID-19 situation all ends? Actually, Dr. Yoon mentioned briefly in your presentation, but do you think we will or we can just go back to where we were, or would this online teaching mode affect how we will teach in the future forever? And if so, then how will this impact us? So maybe this time Dr. Yoon goes first.
Okay, yeah. So as I mentioned in the presentation, I try to use many online tools, ever since I started online teaching. But sometimes, sometimes I wanted to try some new fancy tools, but I was not very confident about learning some new tools. So I just stuck to the traditional method, over and over again. It's very, stressful and time-consuming, learning new tools. But during this pandemic period, I had to learn many new online tools in a short period of time. I was forced to do something new, and now I have gotten used to them. Now, I think many other teachers feel the same ways. When I first used, Zoom, not many people used the Zoom at that time. And students also were not used to, using those kind of tools. And now everybody knows how to use Zoom and, other online tools. So like after COVID-19, I think that we'll have more ways of teaching and learning. So definitely we should go back to physical mode, like, communication is crucial in language learning. So we really need, person-to-person physical communication. But at the same time, we've got already technology. We know quite a lot about that. And, using Zoom is not a big deal now. So as we will be able to incorporate various online modes of teaching and learning, our classes can be more effective and fun. So I think that the future has come earlier, thanks to COVID-19. And after this situation, language education as well as other education will be more, technology-based, and we can make use of them more effectively.
Yeah. And Dr. Che, do you have anything to add?
Sure. So although I developed the summer online course for Korean and was able to offer a hybrid course during the regular semester before the COVID-19 pandemic, I could not offer the full online course in the regular semester until this semester. Unlike the hybrid course that I can use the same assessment plan with the traditional course, the online course has a significant different course structure. And even though we set the same learning outcome and proficiency goal, it was my concern to have different assessment plan across the same course when we offer multi-section course in the same semester. But the COVID-19 forced me to offer the online course this semester, and now it is considered as a new normal in our language curriculum. So after the pandemic, we plan to offer at least one elementary level online course for students from other Emory campus or other schools that do not have Korean language program in Georgia. So before the pandemic, the Korean program was only a few programs that offer a hybrid course in the regular semester. And I think many other programs may add more hybrid course and even full online course in their curriculum. And it will significantly reduce the demand for classroom space and some costs from the college administration's perspective.
Yeah.
And many companies already plan to reduce their office space by increasing the telecommuting sectors. Students would have more flexibility in taking the course since the course contact hour usually reduced less than 50%, and students would have less time conflict with other classes. So, and then if the college can offer enough online courses during the regular semester, some students may complete 1 or 2 semesters without presenting the campus. And even the college could develop online degree program for the students in the different regions. However, this premise of all this prediction is when the online course can achieve the same level or higher learning objective as the Korean course. As you may remember, 10 years ago, MOOC, the massive open online course, was considered a new direction for higher education, but it failed because it could not provide students with the same level of learning experience that the traditional class or seminars bring. So yeah, so that's what we are like expecting after pandemic.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting, and probably who knows what will happen after the pandemic and when we all go back to normal or our regular life. But the thing is, as Dr. Yoon said, probably we'll keep some online tools we learned during this time and in our language teaching, even in classroom language teaching or like outside classroom as an assignment or any kind of extra materials. But also at the same time, as Dr. Che said, probably a lot of the advantages. Like geographically, we can be more like we can be freer, and it's a less cost and all sorts of things that probably will keep just the one portion of online language teaching maybe in our curriculum in the future. So we'll see. Yeah, so that's a very kind of interesting things to think about. So that was my last question. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences and insights with us today. I believe our teachers will find this very helpful and informative. I did. So I would like to wrap up our session by thanking the Korea Society for providing us with this great opportunity to discuss one of the most urgent issues in language teaching at this point. Our special thanks goes to Mr. Linda Tobash for making this happen and paying special attention to Korean language teaching. I sincerely hope that this is a great start into more meaningful collaborations in the future for the field of Korean language education and the Korea Society. So thank you very much. 최 선생님.
Thank you.
감사합니다.
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 감사합니다.